Welcome, everyone, to the Barbell Logic series, Hard-Won Wisdom, Decades in the Arena. I'm your host, Niki Sims, and we are joined by guest host, Gillian Ward. We ended last time talking about something that I know all of us have experienced at some point, which is that part of training when things stop going so well and you fail something, you fail at a meet or you fail your linear progression. And it's like what made it really easy to have fun with is just like not there anymore. So there have been times in both Gillian's training career and in mine where we've hit these really juicy, satisfying PRs. Like Gillian, yours was that 400-pound squat, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then last year, I think it was just over a year ago, I deadlifted 430 and I really want to deadlift 440 for these weird, obscure reasons that we give ourselves to do things. But 440 is 200 kilos and I really want to deadlift 200 kilos in competition. But not long after that, I ran myself into the ground and I got hurt and I just couldn't deadlift for months and it was brutal. And so what was hard for me there is that I kind of associated myself with being a good, strong deadlifter who will never get hurt and will continue to get stronger and who's going to deadlift 500 pounds. So when that short period of time, who knows, I'm deadlifting again, but who knows? But there was this time when it seemed like that was never going to be an option again. And was there something like that for you too, Gillian?
That spoke to me so much because you just saying that made me think about how much we identify and let our numbers and our physical capabilities define us.
Yeah.
And how difficult that is because we found this thing that we love, like we absolutely love it, yet there's the other side of it, which is in something like when we're not putting up numbers that we think we're capable of, it's devastating to us because in your mind, it's like, this is who I am.
Yes.
But it's not who we are. It's what we could do at that time and things change.
Ooh,
so I think, coming full circle with that, but like you, it's like you love it. And I want to tell people because you light the spark for people and they love it as long as it's going great.
Right.
They love it when they're healthy. They love it when there's no major stressor in their life. They love it when they see the numbers going up. But I'd like to know from you, like, how do you find the joy and love when you look at your log or on paper, the numbers are not going up? And when you're doing less than you did, 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, like what keeps you going?
Yeah. I mean, more of my time has been spent lifting numbers that aren't making anything go up. And that could be, for many reasons. Like I've moved across the country a handful of times. I've had some stressful work stress a few times. Recently, there was that kind of injury thing that I've been dealing with. And so there are many times when it's just like, I can't chase numbers. And my identity within that, and I think part of this is linked to social media, which I know you and I want to talk about, is like,
yep.
I post my PR up on Instagram and that's part of my excitement. That's part of my excitement ritual, And then when you're not able to do that, it's like, well, how am I expressing my training anymore? Because who's going to care about my 265-pound deadlift when I can deadlift so much more than that? So you start associating, you lose that part of your training excitement. And you go into the gym doing these weights that used to be easy warm-up weights, and now you're kind of afraid of the lifts. Like that's been happening for me. Is like, okay, am I going to go squat or deadlift today and it's going to make me hurt again? Like it's this exercise of having to trust it,
Absolutely. So watching you and watching your journey that you've posted on social media has been so powerful and inspiring to me because I'm going to be completely honest and just lay it all out there here. Like there are several reasons that I have not posted on social media in the past couple of years, one of them being a stalker followed by an immense amount of personal change in my life that I just needed to step away from anything public.
Yeah.
But an underlying thing was I felt like I wasn't doing anything worthy. I was no longer able to do lift wise what I had done before. I can't get on the bench and, bench 280 and like recognize that I was not sharing what I was doing because I couldn't do what I thought people expected me to do and what I expected of myself, even though my circumstances had changed so much.
And that's even heavier than a 200-pound bench, like that expectation that you had on yourself.
Right. And it's like, well, I can't do these things, so it's not worth sharing. Why am I going to make a bench press post or any post that's lesser than? And I think looking and seeing, having to know the journey is so much more than that. And the pleasure in lifting is in the lifting and in the experience and not in only the result of
the
it.
Numbers. Yeah.
So I think, well, the numbers don't tell the story. And part of how I tell my story is when I log, I put down a lot of personal things in it.
Ooh, yeah.
Not because it's necessary. This is something that you and I have discussed in detail, but my log is also my diary and a journal, and it tells the story. If I had a bad day and something happened the day before, or, anything that goes in there and tells the story. And then when I reflect back on it, I don't look back and say, man, I only squatted 225 that day. I look back and say, these horrible things happen, and I came in here and squatted on that day. So I think being kind to yourself and knowing that like, there's going to be cycles and waves and it's a journey.
Yeah.
Oh, and man. I'm rambling.
No, it's good. It's so funny. We're on such the same wavelength here. Like when I was just getting back into squatting, I don't know, it was like 6 weeks ago or something. I started at 95 pounds. And that was just around the same time that like 24-hour fitness down the street from me opened up. And I like going to 24-hour fitness because it's great people watching. I love broing out. Like I love doing curls. I love doing all that stuff where I can see veins in my arms, like just ridiculous stuff like that. But I remember that I was going to squat 105 pounds that day. And I didn't want to go to 24-hour fitness and do it because I was too embarrassed to squat 105 pounds in public. And I told my friend Andrew, and I was like, I'm not going to go to the gym and squat 105 pounds. And then like the next day I realized how freaking stupid that was, because there are so many other people who are squatting 105 pounds. And like, I am like excited that they're squatting 105 pounds. Like, why would I not let myself be excited for that? And like, if I saw some other girl squatting that at the gym, I'd be like, cool, that's awesome. And like knowing fully that she is on her own strength journey. And like, it made me really see that that's just part of my journey. And so the next time I went and squatted at 24-hour fitness and I squatted like 115 pounds.
I think the context is so important because here we are. We don't want to go do something which may be a lifelong goal for somebody else. I don't want to put up a bench press of 225 is my max, but so many people will never get there. So like I've come to see the failures in that line of thinking and how my own ego gets in the way. And it's like, I don't want to put up something because to me, that's not anything, but it's like, it's all relative. And it's all part of it. And I think to share, if I only put up and share the things that are great and the successes, people don't see what got me there because most of the time is not at that level. How many failures happened along the way? How many small injuries? How much again, like 400 pounds was the most I've ever squatted. What were all the little setbacks along the way? And I think, it's kind of a disservice not to share those things because they're all going to happen. Like we're not always kind of going to be at the top. And I've realized recently that like, it's all part of it. Like I used to be somebody on social media that wouldn't put up a failed rep. I wouldn't put up like a set that looked ugly or something. And then like, I consider myself, to be an educator and to share. And I'm like, it's not all rosy. Like lifting, it's not.
That's another interesting component of this is like, I feel like sometimes we're supposed to be these role models for training success as coaches and as, we're like teaching other coaches now where it's like, well, if I fail this and if I don't hit my goal and if I get hurt or something, like, how can I represent this sport anymore? It's like this really ridiculous weight that we have on ourselves. Which I bet you have felt before.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like heavy.
Like, I even think of attending a competition now and like don't feel
Yeah.
worthy of being there. Like
Yeah.
it is crazy what your mind runs away with
Yeah. It's
and
nuts.
just the pressures that you hold yourself to. And that's part of, I mentioned it on our last episode, but part of the reason that recently I have started getting involved in physical activities of things that I am not good at
Hmm.
is that for me, the balance of not having an expectation on myself.
Ooh, I love
So
that.
like when I go, like I will not, and I'm going to be honest, you know, I could be judged for this. I will not compete again as a power lifter if I cannot do what I used to be able to do. And
Hmm.
I recognize, you know, that's a little bit short sighted. And like, you know, I'm a master's athlete and years have passed, but it's hard to go back to something that you once did before and are not
Hmm.
at the same level. So I've found a
Yeah.
lot of joy
Hmm.
in things that typically, like, you know, I've taken up mountain biking recently that I'm awful at. And like,
Hmm.
you know, this winter we're going to get into biathlon. Like I've like ski
Yes.
shooting and things that
Hmm.
are just not because I don't put the pressure on myself. And
Yes.
it's learning like there's so much pressure we put on ourselves.
Yeah.
And I know that you probably have this experience. It's like Pavlovian in terms of like the response to squatting. We call it in the gym squanxiety, like squat anxiety.
Big time.
And I know it's time to reevaluate when the word squat or deadlift or a lift causes a physical reaction.
Yeah, totally.
And we've all gone through it. I'm like, I want to teach people to love to lift. And when it gets to
Hmm.
that point in your training that you're uncomfortable and you're nervous, I can't tell you when my squats, I used to run them up and they would get heavy, how many bathroom trips I would make
Oh,
before.
yeah, totally.
like,
Yeah, so
like
nervous.
nervous, like, I mean, to the point of like vomiting before, I would
Yeah,
get myself so worked up and say, I can't live like this. And
right.
like, there's a time you're peaking for a meet in this
Yeah,
cycle, but I know that I want to squat for the rest of my life. I'm
yeah.
probably never going to squat 400 pounds again, but I
Hmm.
want to squat for as long as I can walk, and I want to walk for as long as I can live.
Oh, I love that.
I don't know where that came
I'm
from.
gonna get that tattooed on my butt.
So, like, what for you, like, when we can't do these things, what do you find joyful about your training?
Man. Yeah, there was an interesting, tough time to kind of sort through because earlier this summer when I couldn't do anything, like I could hardly bench, I could not squat, I could not deadlift. And so I knew that I wanted to be in the gym at least a couple times a week because I just knew that I didn't want to be a person that didn't go to the gym. Like I was really holding on to my future as someone who continues to work out and train. And so I just know from coaching people and from doing this that the habit, like sometimes the minimum effective dose is just being in the gym and like preserving my training slots. So that was one thing that just made me just get into the gym. And there were a couple times during the week where it was just like, on the third day, I was just like, I'm too bored. I don't want to do it. I'm only going to go twice this week. And I think I did that twice over like 3 or 4 months. So I gave myself a little bit of permission there, but like the bare minimum was just knowing that I was never going to be someone that didn't train. And that's all I needed. That's all that I needed to do. And so I would go in and kind of figure out what I could do and just like listen to different music and kind of goof off and whatever, just make my arms feel pumpy. A lot of it was just like, what kind of arm stuff can I do? Because that's like that instant gratification. I'm
Yep.
not going to cry over it. I get to see how good my biceps look. It's like, that was as much as I needed. And it was as much as I could do. So it worked.
You found something joyful rather
Yeah.
than, and this is actually a topic we discussed before
Hmm.
coming on, which is that so much of our motivation is fear based. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
we're motivated because we're afraid not to be able to anymore. And I'm going to be honest, I have not competed in the past 3 years. And a lot of my motivation was coming from when I would go into the gym of fear of getting worse.
Yeah.
But like, you know, while a very powerful motivation, like that's extremely powerful is fear and fear of getting worse,
Hmm.
it's not positive. So like going into the gym and like, I'm just going to do this so I don't further decline.
Yeah.
Like that's no fun.
Right.
So for me, it's been about like I put in what I need, which is, I need a squat, I need a deadlift, I need to do pull-ups or whatever those things. And I call it like a balance of what I need and what I want
Ooh,
and
interesting.
like
Okay.
manage the session. So there may be a little gymnastic skill or some exercise, like whether it's bro work or arm work, but it's
Mm-hmm.
about like, it's like people that eat their vegetables first. I'm going to eat
Yes.
this because it's good for me.
That's what I do.
And then I'm going to have the yummy part and the
Yeah.
dessert. And I will go into the gym and do what it is that I need that enables
Oh,
what
I
I
like
want.
that. The
Because
need and the
if I
want.
don't squat, if I
Mm-hmm.
don't deadlift, if I don't do those things,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm not going to be able to flip or do handstands or dance or do the things I love
Yeah.
years from now. So that's kind of how I see it, when I'm no longer necessarily making progress, is find something that day, each day. And something else is my experience is not a set. My experience in the gym and focus and everything else literally starts from the first step entered until when I leave. So for me, I don't
Mm-hmm.
allow, I'm not really a huge music person in the
Mm-hmm.
gym. I don't even hear it, but it would be, it could be something fun, but there's no distractions, no phones, nothing else that goes
Yeah.
on.
You're super present.
And it is super present. And
Yeah.
it's the only time that like I don't allow other thoughts. Like there are times that like where like, what am I going to cook for dinner? Or,
Yeah.
did this person email me back? And it just like this precious time, even if the lifts aren't great, but to make the experience the entire experience as opposed to just attaching to, well, did I have a good set?
Oh, I like that.
And a lot of times I will summarize, like when I log, like the experience of the day. Like,
So, if someone wanted to start logging a little bit more about their day, kind of make it a little bit more of a diary, what are the things that you think people should write?
okay, this is getting a little bit silly because most everybody is probably logging on their phone, possibly in True Coach. I have always kept handwritten logs
Uh-huh.
that I transfer.
Hell
And
yeah, I love handwritten logs.
part of that, this is going to sound crazy. My blood, sweat, and tears are in those logs.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is my mood, my handwriting and mood are very related. I can see
Oh,
when I'm
yeah.
frantic. So
Sure.
there's a lot of stuff that I pick up with that. I like to feel the book. I like to see as the pages turn
Me
how many
too.
things that there are in there.
Yes.
I always put the amount of time that the workout took.
Okay.
So start time, stop time, like what time of day, temperature.
Oh,
So right now I live up in Vermont and it's in the 20s in the morning. So the barbells get stored inside. So the temperature will go in that book. If there's something on my mind that I can't get out coming into that workout, it could be I had a fight with my mom. It could be something that's present that may be something affecting the workout, or
mm-hmm.
if there's an injury from the workout before or soreness. And I mean, I may give myself like smileys or emojis for good work or
Yeah.
something that I'm proud of. Obviously, form stuff. And some
I
days,
have a question really quick.
go ahead, go
Do
ahead.
you think by writing those things down, like the heavier mental things, like an injury or like a tough conversation or the stress that you just had to walk out from, do you think just writing those down is really helpful in itself to get it out of your head and help you focus?
I think it's helpful. And I also think that my training log is my story.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm 43. I started gymnastics in 1979.
Mm-hmm.
For 41 years, I've trained.
Yeah, that's so
I mean,
cool.
we won't call training the same as, and it's how I tell my story. Like, I could go back and know what day something profound in my life happened
Mm-hmm.
and the workout of that day and like the performance or other stuff. So to me, it's kind of like all in one. Like training is such a big part of my life
Yeah.
that training diary for me is the diary. And some days it's very minimal. Some days it's the time I started, the time I stopped, what was challenged, corrections for next time that I tell myself, like,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I want to correct next time. This was funny. Right knee was caving in on the squat. It could be anything. And there are days there's more.
Like my, I guess, concern with me doing that or telling someone to do that is that I would just be creating this neurotic monster. Does that happen?
So interestingly enough, I've seen people that get I am not neurotic about it.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on like, there are days that there's very little. And
Mm-hmm.
to me, when there's very little, it's an indicator. Like I know myself enough to know that either I was in a rush
Oh,
or maybe there were things I didn't even want to share that day. Like,
right.
so
Yeah.
to me, it's an indicator. But to me, even if I don't do it, if I go a week without doing whatever it is, it's awesome to look back and
Yeah.
have that. Like it's something I have that. Like there are things or experiences. Interestingly, a comparison of bodybuilding and like powerlifting is that bodybuilding is so fleeting. Like there are photos from this stage.
Oh, yeah.
So where you look a certain way, but like, and it's so subjective. Like I've won, but I don't have a concrete thing there.
Oh,
Because guess
yeah.
what? A week later, I don't look like that anymore.
Right. For how long does that, so like that peak look on the stage, like how long is it? An hour?
Hours.
Wow.
So at my level, potentially hours.
That's amazing.
So what I did not get from that sport, for me personally, was having this like concrete thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because a week later, my body didn't look like that.
Yeah.
But if I set a powerlifting record,
Yeah.
like
there it is. Boom.
that's it. There's no disputing it. That's it. And I'd have the video of that lift for all of time. And I have that. And it's like, I'm not going to say it's not going anywhere because a month later, I probably can't make that lift.
Right.
So the connection with it is that that journal is like my way of not just capturing a bodybuilding competition a couple times a year or a powerlifting meet 3 or 4 times a year, but I get to have that and that memory every single day. So it's effective for me in the moment. It's helpful, but I can't tell you how many times like I'll sit and read through that in my journal and it's like, it'll make me like, I'll have all these memories of all these other things. Oh, I did that the night before and I was with this person and I got to go here. And I'll usually put the location, like if I travel and I'm in a different gym.
I'll do that.
So locations are in there and I'm like, I'm not a very material like person. Like I don't, but like that, my log and those memories, one of my most prized possessions.
Oh, I love it. That makes me really wish I had started keeping a log sooner. I think it's cool. I just had to get a new log like a couple months ago. And, you know, I think I'm like still, maybe I'm like 2 or 3 months into it. And I still see so many pages left. And I just know I'm going to fill them all in. And that makes me really excited.
Even like to count your workouts.
Oh, Lord.
Like when there are new people that they're like, well, how come? And I'm like, do you know how many hundreds and thousands of squats you need to do? And someone's like, my this doesn't look like your this, or why doesn't my handstand look like your handstand? And I'm like, because I have put thousands of reps and thousands of hours into that.
Yeah.
What about, do you ever feel like either you're not working or you're like, well, maybe I should be doing more? I think the log is also a reminder of where you've come from.
Yeah. Oh, girl, I am the queen of shoulds. I should be this. I should be that. I should.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you also see your mistakes. Like there may be a trend that leads to an injury.
Yes.
There may be something that you repeat. So it's been effective for me. And like, I mean, I started as a kid. I don't know why I started it as a child. I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I started logging when I was doing wacky workouts in my bedroom with Rocky and the closed accordion door. But it became a way that, for me, something I like was that I am very inventive and creative with my workouts. So I'm like, if I have all these workouts written down and all these things, like I now have this resource like for other people. And not that like what I do for me is what I should do for somebody else, but like trends and other stuff, it's helped me to be a better coach.
Yes. One thing that I've noticed about you is that you always want to use this to improve your ability to teach and educate. I think that's really cool. I think that's another way to derive meaning from this, especially like when going through that weird time when I was just like, I can't train. Like, what is the point of my life? Like, remembering how good it feels to do something for someone is sometimes what gets me through really crappy times in my training and just in my life. Cause it's just like, I got to get out of my own freaking head. So translating what I'm going through or figuring out what I have gone through before and giving part of that to someone else in a way that will help them, I think is such a big way to like get through those dark times.
You do that every day. I don't know if you know that, but you do that every day. But that's like the finding meaning, like the things that I've done and accomplished in my life, the most empty ones were the ones that say that I did alone, but that I was alone, didn't train with anybody, didn't impact anybody, like got into my own head, got into my own space, became selfish during those times. Like I could have gotten on stage or done something and won, but it was incredibly empty to me. And like things that I've done, whether they're as a team or where I've educated or involved other people along the way, like even the push-up thing, it was less
Yes.
about that. I had training partners. We all did it together. I had a group that would go out to the schools and teach a fitness with me. I had kids that would come in and do the training. And it was about like, I'm like, it's got to be bigger than me. Because those moments, and I think that's where, like with training, like something for me for the last few years that I have not been competitive, I have found even more joy in coaching other people,
Yeah.
less focused. And I knew the time would come to an end. And like, I actually remember having discussions about this with a counselor, a therapist at my old job about, my identity and what am I going to do when the time for me comes to an end? And what good could I do with that? Like, I mean, I don't like, and I'm like, I'm more than just an athlete. I'm not saying just an athlete is a thing, but like, how can I continue to give back? How could this continue on? And the joy of, and like when I'm training other people, like you also, like, I'm so invested. Like if you put like sensors on my legs while I'm watching somebody squat, I am sure there would be like quads firing and this and that, and my heart's beating rapidly and my blood pressure goes off, and like we're in it at that time.
I feel that way when I'm doing form checks sometimes, just like, I get nervous for certain posts because when I do a workout review, like I haven't watched the videos most of the time unless I just like can't wait, then I'll go ahead and watch, but I'll like watch it in the moment and like I'll start sweating for some time and I'll just like clench everything, just like you want it.
And what about like watching somebody that you deeply care about? Like you are in it feeling, you're in it feeling with them. You're like, do I look away? Do I watch? like you want, like, if you could like somehow lift it for them.
Yes. I actually really like what you just said, because you're saying things that people who are just getting into lifting, they can't know yet. They just don't know anything yet because they might have just gotten into their new sport or hobby for like a year. And they just don't know the value that it's going to have to them in 10 years. And there's no way for them to know until they're 10 years down the road. But
so I have things that I would tell a beginner lifter, like just coming into it. Like the first thing is that you don't have to have goals. You don't know enough to have goals. So when people first used to come into my gym and, they would think that they would have to have a numerical goal. Just open yourself wide open, eyes open, ears open, immerse yourself in the experience.
Okay.
Don't focus on what could be. Focus on like the what is right now, rather than, getting fixated on, I want to bench press my body weight in 3 months. Like when I go back to the push-up thing, like focus on the rep, enjoy yourself. Like it takes a long time to have goals. Like I don't think somebody coming in and lifting, they could kind of have an idea, but oftentimes having goals are related to what you've seen other people do.
Yeah.
So as opposed to yourself.
Or your previous self.
Yep. And it's like to really just get to know themselves, to find ritual.
Well, that's interesting.
Like, I mean, I think both of us do the same thing, approach the bar at the same time. I mean, it is uncanny, the repetition that goes into a lot of the things that are in the gym.
Yeah.
I mean, I think prioritizing it, like new lifters, I would also tell, like, I think social media is another problem here because we're so inclined to share everything.
Right.
It's actually really, really enjoyable not to share.
Yeah.
Not to do. I have had the most tremendous experience the last few years not sharing.
Ooh, that's cool.
And not having the camera on. I'm not going to say it was a selfish experience, but I do recognize, however, that people that are being coached online do need to run the camera.
Yes. Yes, please.
It doesn't need to be for the, for the, I'm going to post this, I'm going to post that.
Yeah.
But for a new lifter, it's like, find your joy in it.
Yeah.
Like the classic things that I see all of the time. And what I don't want to do with a new lifter is burst their bubble and be like, at some point, this is going to come to an end.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I want them to recognize like the good that comes from failures, from hitting a roadblock, from hitting a stall, from a reset. And those things are not like, they're part of it for everyone.
Yes.
And what's really going to define them and shape them is what they do in the aftermath of that.
Ooh, I like that.
It's just part of the experience.
Yeah.
Again, for me, one of the more important things as a relatively new lifter is to stop watching everybody else.
Like your
And
gymnastics
like,
coach told you in the very
yep,
beginning.
just, I
Yeah.
mean, you compare yourself only to yourself.
Yeah.
You're going to watch other people so that you could spot them and, so that you could help them out. But when it comes to looking at other people's bodies and numbers, like,
Yeah.
just get away from it.
I've been thinking about that a lot too. This actually came up when we were interviewing someone for a position here at Barbell Logic, and we asked the candidate, who was your role model? And while I was listening to them respond, I realized that I don't have a role model. I can't even think of one person I'd be like, this is my role model. And lately, I've been starting to realize that I think because I really tried to separate myself from trying to compare myself to other people, but you can really look up to someone. You can watch them and be like, that's what they're doing. But I think instead of pulling out their aesthetic or their numbers or anything like that, you can identify with their habits or their perspective. And it's like, that's a good way to have like kind of a relationship. I'm using air quotes right now as like someone who inspires you. It's like, I'm inspired by their work ethic, or I'm inspired by how they handled that. It's like it's their character that is their role model more than their numbers. Does that make sense?
I love that. And I feel exactly the same way. You pull aspects and attributes of the people that inspire you. And it's not that like you don't want to be that person or you
Yeah.
don't want to be like that person.
Right.
You want to incorporate attributes that person has
Yeah.
to be the best you.
Yeah.
Like there are people that are like wildly inspirational to me, but it's not because of necessarily the biggest lift. It is, like you said, it could be their work ethic. It could be the approach. It could be the sportsmanship.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, even outside of the sport, like I would probably have a tough time as an adult if you asked me, as a child, like I said, I was obsessed with Mary Lou Retton. I wanted to be Mary Lou Retton when I was 8. But at 43, I just want to be a better Gillian.
Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I'm stuck on like the social media thing because especially with you just coming back onto social media and like the expectations that we put on ourselves when we are active on social media is that you have to perform. And sometimes I think when I'm going in to do a workout, it's like, well, if I'm going to record anything, I better have a big life lesson in this training session. But it's like the more I think something that I do idolize about people is when they are just real.
And I think that is one of the reasons I got off social media.
Yeah.
Was my social media image was so disparate from my reality that I felt false in the portrayal. So
that doesn't feel good at all.
I would put, it looked like all I ever did was go out and have fun and play in the park and swing around like a monkey and do these wild, crazy physical feats all the time. And I'm like, I take so much pride in educating others and being that person that I was not that I needed to, but it was not reflected in any of my social media.
Oh, wow.
The real difficulty and stuff that I was going through in my life and failures and other stuff. And I'm like, you think that Gillian just goes out and has fun and this is just how it is. And I'm like, that's not the story.
Right.
And then I think about all these people that I'm like, this is awesome. And this person has this awesome life. And that's not the case. And I re-engaged in social media this week. And like, I have made a promise to myself that like, it is going to be, the reality of it all. And there are wins and there are some awesome times, but there are failures and struggles along the way. And if I am going to show the wins and the happy stuff, then I'm going to show the other side of it too, because like that is how you grow.
And then, but also know that like, you don't have to tell us everything.
No, I have no intent, like no
don't
intention
feel pressure
of.
Is what I'm saying.
So for me, social media is not my diary.
Yeah.
But it's not.
You have some good creative outlets. Yeah.
But coming on and representing, like my account, like I like is about being an athlete, but there's more sides of that to show.
Ooh, representing your account. That's kind of an interesting way to think about it. Instead of just here's my life.
Right. And it's not like, and I think there are a lot of people that come on and it is their entire life. And they will put their entire life. Like I have come to really, really appreciate my own privacy. And it's
Yeah.
not something that, like, there was a time that I felt like I shared everything.
Yeah.
And again, some of it was feeling like, oh, I have nothing to share now. Like, I'm not doing, these things. And something I have always struggled with in my professional life is being known for just more than just a body. I think people, and I don't mean what I look like, but I mean people get hung up on the things that I do. And oftentimes my message has gotten lost. And I've realized that a lot of that is my fault, because what I project so much, like even on social media, are the things that I do as opposed to what it is that I have to say.
Oh, interesting.
And when I'm 65, I may not be doing these things, but I'm going to still have a lot to say.
You have a lot of lessons. Like, for you listeners, Gillian was one of, I think we did nutrition for not that long, for a few months, but you were the first nutrition person I ever worked with that made me feel like I had options and that things were workable. And you listened to stuff that was really important to me. And I think that's something that you continue to do for people, is you just like, you clear everything off the table and you put back on the table what is just like from a blank slate importance. And I don't know how I got into this, but I think the important thing that I get from you, and that I think a lot of anybody who's worked with you gets, is that yes, you're an impressive athlete, but you make people feel certain ways because of what you help them identify as important to them. And I think that's a big important thing that someone can do as a coach, and what you're going to help people continue to do.
And I think to tie that together, the same way as a child, like for me as a child, in my childhood philosophy of, people being trapped because there was more time spent on what's, developing the brain
Ooh,
and
yeah.
not the body.
I love that.
I think for me, training is physical, psychological, and emotional all at the same time.
Yeah.
And so much of coaching and programming, like, really addresses the physical, but tying in the emotional, the psychological, the other external factors, like, to me, it's all just kind of like one thing that goes together.
Yeah. You
And,
can't
like,
separate
all
them.
of those that you can't separate them, all of those things need to always be addressed.
Yeah.
And some part of that is constantly changing, where like
Yeah.
linear exists in a vacuum.
Yeah.
We're humans, right? We're not machines. So like, and I think to tell athletes, even novice athletes, that like all of these factors, that's why when someone comes to me and it's like, I have this 12-week program, tell me, is this good? Like, can't answer that.
No, there's no way you can answer that. Yeah. Because it's the person that you're working with. It's not the program that you're working with. Yeah.
I'm like a topic pinball, huh?
What are we talking about now, everybody?
So pinball is one of my nicknames. Okay. So it is. And I think after everybody listens to this, they will understand why.
I guess what we'll do is we'll release an episode and then we'll have everybody vote on what they thought it was about. And then we'll name it. Well, let's put a bow on it for everybody. We started talking about how to handle roadblocks and failures and challenges in lifting. And we'll each do our own top 3 takeaways. Do you want to go first? And I'm going to try and keep you to concise points.
No, you go first. I could steal your answers.
My first one would be to know that you are more than your performance. There is more to you as a person than that failed lift, than that PR you didn't get, than you not being able to do something. There is more to you than that. My other one would be that time does amazing things. It might feel like this is everything. This is judgment day right now. Like, everything feels so heavy when you fail or when things get really hard. But just trust that things are going to be different in a few months or in a year. And then my last thing would be to think of how you can turn this into a learning experience. And I know that phrase gets tossed around a lot, but think of, like, even like what Gillian said, like, write it down, even like talk to someone, because even just with talking to someone, you learn something. But even pick out like one thing that you would use as a piece of advice who's going through the same thing. And also my last thing would be, imagine if like roles reversed, you're your best friend or you just watched your best friend fail a PR, what would you tell your best friend right then? And tell that to yourself. Those are mine.
Those were awesome. Now I wish I went first.
Top that, Gillian.
So the first one I think is the same as yours,
Yeah.
but in a different way.
Mhm.
And it's imagine your training is like this masterpiece that you're creating over a lifetime. And every workout is like a piece of the mosaic,
Oh my
a
God.
tiny puzzle piece.
Yes.
And that's all it is. It's just one piece of the bigger, more beautiful picture. And like, take it for what it is.
Yes.
You got one piece, you move on to the next one. Like that one's done, move on to the next one. And you are always like creating this, improving upon this, and it's always evolving.
Love it.
So I think that's a little bit similar to the first thing that you said. For anybody, like not to take it too seriously.
It's a really good reminder.
This is something that we do for joy, not to take it too seriously and not to take yourself too seriously with training.
Yes.
Like we take it for granted that we're able to lift and like, you know, but how many people don't have access? How many people are not at like a place in their life where they could take time to go to the gym? Like there are people that can't afford to do it.
Right.
So appreciate that we get to do this, that we get to take those hours outside of our day and our week, and to always be grateful, to be grateful for the time, to be grateful for the means,
Yeah.
and to be grateful for our physical capabilities. And that's something that has just hit hard for me even during the pandemic. And, you know, just the thoughts that like, you know, we take it for granted. So each day when I go out there and lift, I don't get angry at myself for not hitting a number. I am always thankful for what it is that I'm able to do. So those are two.
Wait, that was
those
only, I
may
thought
be
that was like
two.
5.
Those may be like 5 or 10. So I'm going to wrap it up over there. I've said entirely too much. I'm sure most people have probably shut this off already.
Oh, that's so good. Don't worry, you'll get to talk more. Just kidding.
I'm going to get booted.
No one's going to vote you off the island, I promise. Doesn't work that way. We tell them what to listen to. Just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. So we'll wrap it up. Okay. So everyone, thank you for listening to me and Gillian talk about failing because it's going to happen. It's a guarantee, but also we've just been able to learn so much from those exercises. And now we have these masterpieces that we're creating. And I just love that. So start writing in your training logs. I totally agree. That's nice to have a hand paper written log and fill it up, put some more detail in there. And thanks, Gillian.
Thank you.
Catch everybody next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.